What's going on, students of Mr. Chitwood's social science class? This is going to be a brief lecture video that's going to be talking about the focus note-taking process and how it can help you not only in my class, that is for your history or social science class, but also your other classes throughout the day. So the focus note-taking process is going to give you guys some skills that hopefully you'll be able to adapt into other classes and hopefully try to bring you some sort of understanding, greater understanding of the content that's being presented to you in math, science, history, foreign language classes. Hopefully this process and this lecture is going to give you a little bit more clarity as to why we take notes, how we take notes, and how specifically we can take notes to be more effective to suit our needs. The lesson objective for this brief lecture video is to really introduce you guys to the types of focus notes and specifically the 5 phases of focus note taking, while understanding how it can support your learning and academic success while you develop skills for both college and career readiness. Your essential question for this lesson that you should be focusing on is really, how can the focus note-taking process enhance my learning in all of my classes? And we're going to talk more about essential questions specifically, but it is always important to really kind of slow down whenever a teacher shows you something like an essential question or a focus question, to tell your brain, hey, this is probably pretty important information, and I should probably take some time to write this down so that I have some sort of directive. But we're going to be talking about essential questions more over the next 15 to 20 minutes. So go ahead and take maybe like 15 seconds to jot that down. It says, how can the focus note-taking process enhance my learning in all of my classes? It's also probably a good time to remind you that at any point throughout this video, you can pause, stop, rewind, and fast forward if you feel like you missed something or need to go back, or if you need to fast forward through this video as you're watching it a second time. So let's start off with a good quick write. I want you guys to take maybe 2 to 3 minutes to think about what you think the purpose of taking notes is in a class, and how do notes help you as an individual. So go ahead and take 2 to 3 minutes on that piece of note paper that's in front of you. Take some time, reflect, think about what you think the purpose of taking notes is in a class, whether or not you think a teacher's just trying to get mad at you and mean to you and try to make you do a whole bunch more busy work, or whether or not you think there's more of a real purpose behind the whole focus note-taking process. So go ahead and maybe stop this video while you think and reflect, and go ahead and resume it once you're done with your quick write. All right, so now that you have an understanding of your understanding of what you think the purpose of taking notes is in a class, let's talk about the pros and cons, maybe stuff that you might have talked about in your quick write. Some of the pros in taking notes is that it helps you visually remember information by writing it down. For some of us, we're visual learners, and it helps us to really understand what it is the teacher's trying to tell us. So we will write it down in our piece of note paper, and hopefully that kind of helps it stick in our brains, right? It also can allow you to go back to information after you heard it or saw it in lecture for the first time. So maybe you're studying for a test and you have notes that you know that you took notes on that topic, so it allows you to kind of go back and review that information, stuff that might be on a test. And oftentimes taking notes gives you a greater purpose in a lecture, or allows you to be more engaged with a lecture rather than just sitting there trying to take information in. It gives you something to do, something to help you process the information that is being spewed at you from the teacher or the lecturer or whoever's giving you a speech. The cons, however, of taking notes is that, heck, taking notes is not fun. It makes lectures less fun, and it might make it more difficult for you to write down all the information that the teacher's trying to present, and in turn making you less engaged in the lecture by making you pay less attention to the lecture. So sometimes notes can often get in the way of the process that we're trying to do, that is trying to retain information that the teacher wants us to know. But I'm going to argue throughout this video that is actually a pretty important process should it be done right. Having said that, the main thing when taking notes is to have that purpose and have some sort of a structure. And I said this at the beginning of the lecture, that essential questions or focus questions, sometimes teachers will call them lesson questions, are also important in terms of giving you a purpose and a reason why to take notes, and specifically maybe what to take notes on. So let's talk about what an essential question is. Oftentimes you might see essential questions posted up on the board in front of the classroom. For me, you guys know it's on those boards on the side of the classroom. And sometimes teachers might just tell you, hey, this is what we're going to be focusing on today. But an essential question is a framework to guide you towards the learning objectives. You should think of them as a roadmap of where you want your notes and understanding of a certain topic to end. Sometimes teachers provide you with essential questions, sometimes they don't. But I'm going to challenge you that if you are not always provided with an essential question, that you try to create one for yourself based off the learning objective or the topic, so that you have a mental understanding of what you should take notes on. Because 99.9% of the time, the teachers aren't expecting you to write everything down, nor should you. Not everything is going to be important up on a PowerPoint presentation or coming out of a teacher's mouth. So it is your job as an audience member in a lecture to really try to think about what is the important information, how does it help me answer my learning goals, my objectives, and specifically that essential question that I wrote down at the beginning of that lecture. So again, to remind you of your essential question for this lesson, it is, how can the focused note-taking process enhance my student learning in all of my classes? So what you should be doing throughout the rest of this video is trying to take notes, yes, on a note-taking video lecture, on how the focused note-taking process can enhance your own learning throughout all of your classes. If any information presented in this video lecture does not help you or help you answer the essential question, you probably shouldn't be writing it down, because it's probably not all that important. So let's talk about a few different types of focus notes, and this is not an inclusive list of what those focus notes are, but just to give you an example, we have the Cornell note style method. You see this a lot throughout the AVID program, but we're actually moving more towards this idea of focus notes in AVID as well. So there's other things such as a mind map, taking interactive notebook style of notes, 2 or 3 column notes, as we've kind of practiced within our collaborative study group so far this year, the outline method. Whatever method suits you is the method that you should probably be taking notes in. But to give you a little assistance in choosing the best type of notes for you as a learner and as an individual, we're going to talk about these specifically. Before we talk about those different types of notes, I want to kind of go over the 5 phases of focus note taking that you guys received in a handout prior to watching this video. They range from taking notes to processing notes to connecting thinking, summarizing and reflecting on learning, and applying learning. It is through this process and through these 5 phases that taking notes is actually going to make you a more reflective individual student. It's also going to probably help you understand why taking notes is so important and how it can help you in all of your classes. So, phase 1. Creating the notes. I want you guys to, every time we take notes, and especially for this video right now, to select a note-taking format that helps you frame your understanding of topics and material the best. And the first thing that you should do on any type of focus notes is to record the essential question, set it up how you wish, and to take notes on the following video and discussions and readings that you might be talking about in a way that meets your note-taking objective. So I'll remind you once again of that essential question. I told you these things were going to be really important. That is, how can the focus note-taking process enhance my learning in all of my classes? So if you haven't already, go ahead and set up your notes as you wish, be it any type of style that you are previously comfortable with. Make sure you record that essential question, and we'll start here in about 5 to 10 seconds. All right, so to give you an idea of different types of note-taking format, we have your traditional Cornell note style. This format is typically, it has a few different sections. You have your essential question up at the top. You have 2 columns kind of in the middle where you have questioning and also a spot for summarizing or jotting down notes. And then at the very bottom, some sort of a reflection or a short summary. This, for me, and my understanding, is my own preferred method of note-taking style. It just kind of makes things click and helps me understand things in terms of how my brain kind of takes information in. And I've noticed it also fits with how my teaching style and how I run my classroom. So you'll also have to take that into account for yourself as a student as to which type of notes may be more conducive for which type of class. You also have graphic organizers. Sometimes teachers will give this to you as sheets of paper with already structured ways of jotting down your understanding of the topic or specific stuff from a Google slide presentation or a PowerPoint presentation, that really helps you identify where information should go on this graphic organizer to help you kind of organize your thinking. You also have your mind map and kind of mind web style, in which you can use diagrams, webs, and flowcharts to help you connect main ideas. You have interactive notebooks, in which sometimes teachers will have you just keep a larger notebook for their class, in which they'll have you maybe glue some stuff in, maybe interact with that kind of stuff. They'll have pop-out figures, coloring pages, all that kind of stuff, in which you are also summarizing and processing and reflecting on the information that you're using on these notebook pages. Then you also have 2 and 3 column notes, where content is organized into 2 or 3 columns based on the note-taking objectives and the purpose of the lesson. And what we're going to do over the next 7 to 8 minutes is I'm going to give you guys a quick moment to kind of reflect on what we've just talked about in terms of the few different types of note-taking. And we're also going to watch a 7 to 8 minute video that's going to talk about taking notes from the crash course team that is talking about study skills in regards to how to best take notes and why those are important. So I want you guys to keep in mind our essential question in terms of how the focus note-taking process can help you as a student in all of your classes. And
Hi, I'm Thomas Frank. This is Crash Course Study Skills, and today we're going to look at how to take great notes. And you're probably going to want to write that down. Why focus on your notes? Well, simply put, when it comes to learning and retaining information, output is just as important as input. When you're first learning a fact or a concept, you're intaking new information. But to retain that information for a long time, you need to store it in a place that you can easily access later on, and you need to put it in your own words. Now, before we talk about specific note-taking systems, what information you should actually record in your notes, and whether or not it's helpful to blend them up and drink them like a milkshake, let's start with what's going to set you up for success in the first place, showing up to class prepared with the right tools. There are 3 routes you can go in selecting those tools: paper, computer, or ARM. What's the best option? Well, unless you're that guy from Memento, we can probably narrow it down to either paper or computer. Between those two, there's been a debate going on for years, but we do have some recent scientific evidence that we can turn to for some hard answers. According to a study done at Princeton University in 2014, students who took notes on a 15-minute lecture using a laptop wrote an average of 310 words, while those who wrote on paper only averaged 173. So it seems that typing your notes definitely does give you a speed advantage. The downside to becoming the metaphorical speed racer of note-taking, though, was that these same students were able to recall less information when tested later on. So why does this happen? Well, the root of the problem lies in the fact that the computer note-takers were much more likely to record what was being presented word for word. Let's go to the thought bubble. When you're paying attention to a lecture, there are 2 aspects of the information being presented. Since complex information is communicated through language, be it written or spoken, we get both the syntax, like the letters and sounds that make up the words, as well as the meaning. When you're typing out your notes, the speed advantage enables you to record a much more complete version of what your teacher is saying. However, your working memory, the part of your memory that deals with the information you're currently intaking, can only deal with so much at a time. And current cognitive science research puts that amount at around 4 bits or chunks of information, which we'll talk about in another video. The combination of the recording speed advantage and your built-in mental processing limit can lead you to devote more mental resources to the syntax of the message, those pesky letters and sounds, and less to the actual meaning. As a result, you learn less in class and you create more work for yourself later on. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So does this mean that a pen and paper always beats your laptop? Well, not necessarily. Now that you know that the speed increase you get through typing has a downside, you can just resolve to type less and pay more attention to the meaning of the message while you're in class. Still, paper does have an implicit advantage as it requires less self-control. Your longhand writing speed automatically limits how much you pay attention to the syntax, and as a bonus, you don't have to worry about being tempted to go on Facebook in the middle of class either. Regardless of what tool you decide to choose though, make sure you come into class well prepared. If you're using paper, have a well-organized notebook with plenty of blank space, as well as a good quality pen that you enjoy writing with. And if you decide that a computer fits your style better, find a good note-taking app like Evernote or OneNote, Dropbox Paper, or any other that fits your fancy. You should also close out of any apps or websites that aren't relevant to the lecture. That'll help you stay focused, though you still might have to work to ignore that guy in front of you who's taking a BuzzFeed quiz to figure out his Hogwarts house. I'm a Ravenclaw, by the way. Though that's just what a Slytherin would say, isn't it? Anyway, now that you're prepared and equipped with the right tools, what exactly should you be recording with them? After all, you can't just record everything. As the famous mathematician Eric Temple Bell noted, the map is not the thing mapped. Just like a map is useful only if it summarizes and simplifies what it represents, your notes are a useful reviewing tool only when there's a high signal-to-noise ratio. That means they've got to be packed with the information you need to know for the tests and later application, and devoid of anything that doesn't matter. It's a bit hard to make specific recommendations here since there are so many different subjects and classes in which you'll need your note-taking skills. However, we can put forth some general guidelines that will point you in the right direction. First and foremost, gauge each class you're taking early on. Carefully look at the syllabus, pay attention to any study guides or review materials you can get your hands on, and make mental notes about different types of questions you see on early quizzes and tests. Additionally, anytime you hear your professor say something like, "This is important, pay attention," in lecture, that's a cue to take extra careful notes. A lot of my friends in school thought it was a cue to take a nap, but they were wrong. Beyond that, whether you're sitting in class or going through a reading assignment in your textbook, you want to pay special attention to things like big ideas, summaries, overviews, or conclusions, bullet lists, like this one, terms and definitions, and examples. And examples are doubly important, especially in classes where you have to apply concepts and formulas to problems, like in math or physics. You can probably remember times when an example presented in class made perfect sense, but then a later homework problem using the same exact concept completely stumped you. There's a big difference between being able to follow along while someone else solves a problem and having the chops to solve it on your own. But by recording every detail of the examples you see in class, as well as making side notes about why the concepts being used work, you'll have a lot more ammunition to work with while you're tackling those homework problems. Now that we've covered the elements of good, useful notes, let's get into the specifics of how to take them. Now there are plenty of note-taking systems out there, each with their own pros and cons, but with this video we're just going to focus on 3. The outline method, the Cornell method, and the mind mapping method. The outline method is probably the simplest one of them all, and it's likely the one you're most familiar with. To use it, you just record the details of the lecture or book you're reading in a bullet list. Each main point will be a top-level bullet, and underneath it you'll indent further and further as you add more details and specifics. The syllabus I wrote for this very crash course series is a good example of outline-style notes. Each video's outline has several different top-level bullets, followed by several levels of detail. And yes, this is my actual outline. Now, the outline method is great for creating well-organized notes, but because it's so rigid, you can easily end up with a ton of notes that all look the same. So to prevent that from happening, use formatting tricks to make important details stand out when you're reviewing them later on. For example, in these notes I took during an information systems class, you can see that I've got several details written down underneath prototyping. All of them were important enough to write down, but since the professor specifically mentioned that quick development and low cost were the most important aspects of prototyping, I made sure to bold that line. Next, we're going to go over the Cornell method. Developed by the Cornell University professor Walter Pock back in the 1950s and popularized in his book How to Study in College, the Cornell method is a time-tested system that involves dividing your paper or a table in your note-taking app into 3 distinct sections: the Q column, the notes column, and the summary column. During a lecture, take your actual notes in the aptly named notes column. Yeah, you'll learn that there's not a whole lot of misdirection when it comes to study skills. Anyway, here you can use any method you want, be it the standard outline method that we just talked about, or something more flexible. At the same time, when you think of questions that weren't answered in the lecture, or that would be great prompts for later review, write them down in the Q column. These questions will come in handy when you're going through your notes in the future, as they'll point you to the most important information and help to frame your thinking. The summary area will remain empty until the lecture is over. Once that time comes, take 2 or 3 minutes to briefly look over the notes you took and the questions you wrote down, and then write a 1 to 2 sentence summary of the biggest ideas that were covered. This serves as an initial review, which helps to consolidate everything that was presented up here and to solidify your understanding while everything is still fresh in your mind. If neither of these 2 methods seems like the right fit for you, you might like the final method we're going to cover, which is mind mapping. Mind maps are diagrams that visually represent the relationships between individual concepts and facts. Like outline-style maps, they're very hierarchical, but that's where the similarities end. Outline-style notes are linear and read much like normal text, while mind maps look more like trees or spider webs. To create a mind map, you write the main concept smack dab in the middle of the page, and then branch out from there to flesh out the details. This method works really well on paper, but there are also apps like Coggle, which will let you create mind maps on your computer as well. So what's the best method? Well, that's up for you to decide. I recommend trying each one out and making your own tweaks as you go along. Also, remember that not every class will work best with the exact same method. Your history notes are probably going to look pretty different from your math notes. So that's where we're going to wrap this video up. At this point, you should know how to come to class prepared to take good notes, what to focus on during the lecture, and what method to use.
All right, so now that we've watched a quick video from the crash course team that's focusing primarily on study skills, that is how to take notes, let's kind of interpret their understanding of the purpose of notes and specifically how to take them and how that fits in with the 5 phases and how that fits in with the 5 phases of focus note taking. So we've already covered the first phase, that is taking notes. Now we're going to focus on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th phases. That is the focus note taking process. The second phase is processing notes. So during this phase, this is after you've listened to the lecture, after you've taken your notes, this is where you're going to think about the notes that you took from the video or discussions or lecture or whatever type of notes you were taking on. What you're going to do here is that you're going to revise the notes by either underlining, highlighting, yes, highlighting, even though we've banned them, circling, chunking, questioning, adding, deleting, to identify, select, sort, organize, and classify the main ideas or details that are most important and helpful to you when understanding your learning objective or also answering that essential question. This is where you're going to evaluate the relative importance of the information and the ideas in the notes. Phase 3 is where you guys are going to connect thinking. This is where you are going to think beyond the notes. Also where you are going to analyze the notes using inquiry to make connections and deepen content knowledge by asking questions and adding your own thinking to create a greater understanding, to identify gaps in knowledge or points of confusion, and to also connect your new learning to what you already know. So during phase 3 is the best time for you to kind of think about what you've already learned and connect it to the new learning or the new information that you have taken down from this lecture to help you come to a greater understanding. Phase 4 is where you're going to summarize and reflect. This is where you're going to think about the notes as a whole. You're going to pull together the most important information and aspects of your notes, and you're going to think about them to craft a concise summary that captures the meaning and importance of the content and reflects on how the learning helps you meet the note-taking objective. Ply your learning. You're going to ask yourself, how is this new learning or information helpful in my own learning process or understanding of the essential question or topic? So this is where you're going to be using your notes to move forward and progress in your understanding of the topic. And this is where my key tagline comes in with the importance of taking notes and why we take them. Is if you're just gonna sit through a lecture and take notes and never look at them again, there's probably no reason for you to really take notes in the first place. You should probably just pay more attention to the lecture the first time and to try to understand and put the information together in your head better if all you're going to do is take notes down one time and then forget about them and put them in your binder or your backpack and never look at them again. But the importance of these 5 phases of the focus note taking process is so that you guys engage with your notes after you take them, to reflect upon them, and to apply your new learning. You come to some sort of a conclusion to that essential question or your topic. Now that we have concluded our lesson or in our lecture on focus note-taking process, I would like you guys to do a little bit more of a reflection to kind of demonstrate to me that you guys know the knowledge from this video, but also to demonstrate to yourself that moving forward, you can use this focus note-taking process not only in your social science class, but also in your other classes throughout the day. So don't forget to fill out the Microsoft form for this video to demonstrate your knowledge. You can find this link either on Edmodo, or you can scan this QR code if you're viewing this on a computer with your phone. And also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video. Have a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing all of your wonderful responses in terms of this focus note-taking format and process. Have a fantastic day.